When families gather for the holidays, they usually plan fun activities to create lasting memories together. For the Jones family, this was no different. They decided to go caving at Nutty Putty Cave, a popular spot near Salt Lake City, Utah. But little did they know, their day of adventure would soon turn into an unimaginable tragedy. John Jones, excited to spend time with his family, was looking forward to some fun exploring. He had been caving before, though this was his first time at Nutty Putty. John considered himself pretty experienced. He and his brother Josh had spent much of their youth caving in various caves around Utah. However, over the years, John had gotten busier. He was now a medical student at the University of Virginia, with a wife and a young child. His schedule had become hectic, and caving wasn't something he did as often anymore. For the Thanksgiving break, John came back home to visit his family. The plan for the day was simple: enjoy the outdoors, go hiking, and explore the cave. Nutty Putty Cave was known for being beginner-friendly, so the family thought it would be a great place to have some fun. John's wife, Emily, decided to stay back at the house with their 1-year-old daughter, Lizzie, while John and his brother Josh led a group of family and friends into the cave. As John and his group made their way into the cave, they explored the main open sections first. There was the maze room, filled with twists and turns, leading around large boulders. They also checked out the slidey, large, sloping area with a rope to guide them down. These parts were fun and easy for everyone, but they soon decided to push further into the cave, searching for more challenging areas. John and Josh, along with 2 of their friends, wanted to explore something more exciting. They had heard about a tight passage in the cave called the Birth Canal, a narrow and difficult tunnel that was known for its tight squeeze. It was a challenge even for experienced cavers, but John and Josh thought it would be fun to give it a try. They consulted the map to find its location and then began their search. The Birth Canal was supposed to be a long, tight passage with a particularly narrow squeeze near the end. If they could get through it, they would find a small room to turn around and stand up. It sounded tricky but doable, especially for seasoned cavers like them. John and Josh ventured off into a smaller tunnel, moving through tight squeezes and uneven rock surfaces. It was physically demanding, and they had to twist their bodies in all directions to get through. The first part of the passage was called the corkscrew, and it required patience and flexibility to get through. But they were experienced, and they pushed forward, eager to reach their goal. After making their way through the corkscrew, John and Josh reached a small ledge. This area was tricky, but they thought they could manage it. John, being taller and heavier than his brother, was facing a much tougher challenge. At 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, John quickly realized that turning around in the narrow space wasn't an option. He had no choice but to keep pushing forward. John squeezed through the tight space, trying to keep calm. The passage angled downward, and he was now moving head first. He thought he saw an opening ahead, and that gave him some hope. If he could just get through this narrow section, there would be more room to move. But as he continued to push forward, the space seemed to get even tighter, and he felt stuck. What John didn't know was that no one had ever made it through this particular part of the tunnel. The space was so narrow it was like a trap, and no caver had ever crossed over the ledge he was trying to navigate. Despite this, John kept his cool, convinced that there would be an opening soon. He was in a tight spot, but he thought he just needed to push through. Suddenly, things took a turn. As John squeezed forward, he realized he couldn't move anymore. His body was wedged in so tightly that he couldn't go up, down, or sideways. John was stuck, trapped in a small opening. He was nearly upside down, and gravity was pushing his body deeper into the crevice. John's situation quickly turned serious. He was stuck upside down, his arms trapped and his body wedged in a small, tight space. The only thing he could do was stay as calm as possible and focus on breathing. His chest was squeezed so tightly that he could only take shallow breaths. He called out to his brother Josh, who had been following behind him, to warn him not to come any further. Josh heard John's calls and rushed to find him. He made his way through the narrow passage, carefully maneuvering through the corkscrew area and pushing forward. Finally, Josh reached John, and what he saw was alarming. John's legs were sticking out from the rocks, his body completely wedged in the opening. Josh tried everything he could to help. He gripped John's legs and pulled with all his strength, but it was no use. John's body was so tightly trapped that no amount of pulling could free him. The space was just too small and cramped for any real movement. Realizing how serious the situation had become, Josh knew they needed help. He decided to leave John in the narrow tunnel and go back to the entrance to get professional assistance. John had to stay behind, alone but not forgotten. He was still conscious, trying his best to remain calm and keep breathing as the hours passed by. After Josh left to get help, John was left alone in the cave. The hours dragged on, and John continued to fight against the exhaustion and panic that threatened to take over. It was a struggle just to keep breathing, and the pain from being stuck in the tight position was unbearable. John knew he needed to stay calm if he was going to make it out of this alive. Meanwhile, Josh made his way back to the entrance and told the rest of the group what had happened. Word quickly spread, and soon a rescue operation was underway. The first rescuer, Susie Mata, arrived at the scene around 12:30 in the morning, several hours after John had become stuck. Susie, though smaller in stature, was skilled in cave rescues and was determined to help. She made her way through the tight passages, carefully navigating the corkscrew and other narrow sections. Ropes were tied to her ankles as a precaution, in case she became stuck as well. Once she arrived at John's location, she assessed the situation. John had been stuck for hours, and it was clear that time was running out. John was still conscious, and though he was exhausted, he managed to speak with Susie. There was a glimmer of hope as John realized that help had finally arrived. Susie quickly got to work, preparing to pull John out using ropes and other rescue equipment. As Susie assessed John's position, she realized just how challenging it would be to get him out. The space he was stuck in was so tight that every movement felt like a battle against the rocks and gravity. John's arms were pinned in such a way that he couldn't help with the effort to free himself. His legs were wedged into a tiny opening, and the friction was so strong that even the ropes couldn't make any progress. Despite the difficulties, Susie wasn't about to give up. She and her team worked tirelessly, using all the tools they had to try and free John. They attached webbing straps to his legs and attempted to pull him out using ropes. But each attempt proved to be just as fruitless as the last. The ropes couldn't slide or pull John's body up the way they needed them to. The tightness of the tunnel was simply too much for the standard rescue methods to work. It was clear that they needed to think outside the box. After exhausting all other options, Susie and her team decided to try a pulley system, which had been successfully used in past rescues. They set up the pulley system and began the difficult task of lifting John up and out of the narrow space. But even with the pulley system in place, they faced constant setbacks. The rocks and the shape of the cave kept causing the ropes to get stuck, slowing down every effort. John, meanwhile, remained stuck, his body still wedged in the tightest part of the cave, unable to help with the rescue. Time was running out. Every minute felt like an eternity, and the strain on John's body was taking its toll. As the hours wore on, the rescue team continued to struggle with John's extraction. The pulley system, though a last-ditch effort, was still no match for the unrelenting grip of the rock around him. Despite their best efforts, the rescue team was unable to dislodge John. The situation grew more dire with every passing minute, and John's condition worsened as he became weaker and more exhausted. Rescue workers were still working into the early hours of the morning, but it was clear that time was running out. Despite the heroic efforts of those involved, John Jones couldn't be freed in time. At around 5 a.m., after over 24 hours of tireless rescue attempts, John passed away in the cave. If you found this story as tragic as we did, please consider subscribing to our channel for more true stories and to help keep John's memory alive.